Good afternoon, everyone. For those of you who are here, thank you for joining us today. My name is Megan Williams, and I'm the Director of Support Services at Alzheimer Group. Alzheimer Group supports people living with dementias and their family members through various services and programming. For more information, you can go on our website at agiteam.org. Today's lecture is made possible by the generous support of the Lindsay Memorial Foundation, as well as the Lasner Learning Center. AGI is a charitable organization and we rely on donations. It's a free lecture, but you're welcome to donate by calling us or visiting our website at any time. Today, hopefully we won't have any more internet glitches, but note that this will be recorded and you can review the webinar at a later date. So today I would like to introduce you to Mary Catherine Lundquist.
Lundquist.
I'm sorry.
That's all right, don't worry.
Who is a program director of Care to Caregivers organizations in the States. She will be talking about across the miles long distance caregiving. So Mary Catherine, do you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, certainly. Thank you. Thank you, Megan, for inviting me to be here. And thank you, everybody who is here today. We're so glad that you're able to take some time out to get some support for yourself for the caregiving that you are doing. So I work at the COPSA Institute for Alzheimer's Disease and Related Disorders at Rutgers University in New Jersey, USA. So I'm so happy to be here with you. And we have a clinic where geriatric psychiatrists and social workers where people can come and get evaluated to find out what may be causing their memory problems, get their medications managed. We do lots of training around the country, and we also have a peer support helpline. So caregivers can call our helpline and talk to someone who's also been a caregiver and get assistance with any phase of caregiving. So we've been around for 47 years. So I've been there for 27 of those years. So a lot of what I'm going to share with you today is based on the wisdom that we've collected in supporting people over these years. We know that everybody who is here has a lot of wisdom as well because you're engaged in caregiving. So please, I encourage you to use your chat today. I'm going to ask lots of feedback and for your input into things. So please feel free to use your chat. I don't know if we have the capacity to unmute it all.
We should.
If you want to unmute, please go ahead and do that as well too. So don't worry about writing anything down unless you really want to, but Megan has a handout that summarizes everything that we're talking about with a little worksheet so you can kind of work on these things that we're going to talk about after the session. And also you'll have slides of the session as well. And it's being recorded so you can go back and look over anything else afterwards as well. So long distance caregiving. So we know that caregiving is very challenging, right? So many complex things that caregivers need to manage, and it can be even harder to do this if we're at a distance. And it doesn't matter if you're not the day-to-day caregiver. It can be very time-consuming, it can be very emotionally draining, very mentally draining, and very physically draining as well. So we are going to talk about some strategies to help you navigate as you care for your loved one, as you are also caring for yourself. So our learning objectives today, we're going to identify challenges and sources of information and support. We're going to clarify what you can and what you can't do as the long distance caregiver. And then you'll have an opportunity to list some short-term goals and action plans for how you can help your loved one and also care for yourself. That's very, very important. We know everybody spends lots of time focusing on their loved one with the memory loss, and we want to make sure that you are not forgotten as well. So first, let's stop and let's think for a minute. What is long distance caregiving? The most common definition is that the person lives at least 2 hours away from the person who is needing care. However, for some people, the distance might be a lot greater. Being able to drive there during the daytime, if it only takes you a few hours to get there, is much different than if you live in a completely different part of the country, right? It might be difficult to get the resources, to have the financial resources and the time to kind of make that trip to provide some needed in-person support. And some experts even define the term long distance caregiving as when there are caregiving complications, right? You might even live within a day's driving distance, but there might be some complications in your life that you're not able to travel there as well. So maybe there's a physical disability, or maybe you don't have transportation right now. So all of those things can contribute to the long distance caregiving situation. So if your loved one lives in a nursing home or an assisted living somewhere and you can't be with them every day, that's a form of long distance caregiving as well. It makes it much harder to navigate all of these things. So I'd love to hear from everybody who is here today. How far are you from the family member that you're providing support for? So please take a moment and let us know about that in chat. A 5-hour flight. Thank you for sharing that, Karen, right? So that's a lot. You just can't pop over there to take care of something that comes up. That's a big commitment. My father is in Brazil, very far. Adriana, you win the prize for that right now. Barbara, a 5-hour drive, and Lauren, my mom is in Montreal and I live in Israel. So another very, very far away. And Joanne is sharing a 1.5-hour drive. So some of us might be a great distance, some of us might be a little bit closer, but because of the things, the other responsibilities that we have in our life, we might not be able to get there. So it may be just as bad as if we are in another country, right? So good for us to be aware of that. 2 hours of driving for work. Thank you, Jillian, for sharing that. So so as you're dealing with the long distance caregiving, let's everybody just quickly pop in chat there. What are some challenges you face as a long distance caregiver? And maybe just give us, maybe your top thing. What's the main thing that you find really, really challenging? We know that for lots of people, it can be a conflict with work hours, like especially if you live in another time zone and you're trying to make phone calls for your loved one, you might have to be doing that in the middle of the night to be contacting the agencies where your loved one lives as well. So that can really be a challenge for people. How about what's your main challenge? Not having regular eyes on. Both parents have dementia. Thank you for sharing that, Joanne. And wow, yeah, it's difficult, right? You have one person and then you have two people and you don't have direct eyes there. We're going to talk about that today. And Lauren is sharing not knowing what is going on day to day. Yes, that can be very, very challenging for everyone. So thank you everybody for sharing that. And please keep putting those things in chat to Adriana, honest updates about his current conditions. Right, even if you have trusted people who are kind of giving you information on that, it's different when we can kind of see for ourselves, right? So all these things are challenging. Please continue to put those things in there and we'll definitely read those out. So, and as those things are coming in, let's remind ourselves as we delve into this conversation that the illness that our loved one has is an organic illness that's impacting the brain, right? So we know that our loved one cannot do things for themselves. It's because of changes that are going on in the brain, right? So we know that a main area that gets impacted for people who have Alzheimer's disease and other neurocognitive disorders as well is that they have very little insight into their situation, right? They think they're fine. We know that they're not fine, but they insist that everything is fine for them. And they also have impaired judgment, which means that they act in ways that may put them in harm's way, right? They do things which aren't safe. They're giving away their personal information, which puts them at financial risk. They're driving when they shouldn't be driving. They're not eating as they should be eating. So all of these things get impacted. We know that the social skills can get impacted. We know a person can have difficulty with language, but for this conversation, we know that decline in insight and poor judgment really factor in. So, and Barbara is sharing here, it's very emotionally draining. Yes, it is. It's very emotionally draining when you're so far away. Sometimes it can relieve stress when we're there and we can do something to resolve the situation, right? It's harder when we are far away. Thank you for sharing that, Barbara. So as we have this conversation, and if you can relate to this, do you feel that you're the person who you're supporting, do they have decreased insight and poor judgment? If you can relate to that, give us a yes or a no in chat. Let us remember this as we continue with this conversation, because it can really, really impact it can really, really impact their ability to kind of agree with a plan that we might have in place that's really going to help them, right? This can make them resistant to care. Anybody here have a loved one who's being resistant to all the nice things that you want to do to kind of help support them and keep them safe and give them a good quality of life? If that's a yes, let us know in chat there, or give us a little hand raise as well. Yes, yes. 2 yeses from Jillian. Thank you for sharing that. So yes, everybody's saying yes, and absolutely. All right, good. So we definitely understand this. Yes, very, very good. Thank you for sharing that. So when your loved one is resistant to care, some tips that we can have is to engage with them on their strengths. So we know they have deficits. They might not be aware of their deficits because of their poor insight, right? And Adriana is sharing, not now, since the stage is more advanced, but we have been there, right? Yes, thank you. So this can all be harder at the beginning when a person still does have some agency and independence to kind of convince them about things that need to be done to keep them safe, right? So what we can do when we're in those earlier stages is, number one, hold on, because like as Adriana says, it's not always going to be this way. Things are going to get different down the line. So hold on. But while you are in these periods, try to engage them on what their strengths are. Sometimes professionals in the area can kind of help you navigate all of these things, like having a third party so it's not directly coming from you. For instance, with driving, it might be easier if the doctor says you can't drive anymore than the adult child saying, Mom, I'm taking away your license here. And also it requires a lot of being creative. There's no Band-Aid situation for all of this. It requires us being in there and trying to be creative to come up with solutions to help with all of this. So I love these pictures. I want you just to take a minute and I want you to look at these. So what do you think is going on in these pictures? And you're welcome to unmute anybody if you want to unmute, or if you want to type in chat. What are the older adults seeing when they look in the mirror? The older adults are seeing their younger selves, right? So they're not seeing themselves as older. And then this picture here, this woman, she was a teacher. So she's looking at herself younger and thinking about when she was a teacher, when she had purpose, when she had a role. And this gentleman is thinking about his accomplishments, something that he did that was really, really important to him. And he's happy about that. So yes, all of these memories, and people carry this with them. Even when they have memory impairment, they carry who they used to be and they're very attached to that. So as we try to engage with our older adult family members who have memory impairment, in addition to remembering about decreased insight and judgment, we also want to bring into the conversation who they used to be and how do we keep that as a part of the conversation as well. Lorna is sharing, my mom fixate on how old she looks when she looks in the mirror, not how she looked in the past. Yeah, sometimes it's shocking, right? When they look in the mirror and see the wrinkles, they don't think it's them because they think about themselves being different. So just helpful for us to keep this in mind as we go about supporting them. So what do we all want? We all want this, and it doesn't matter how old we are, right? We want to feel safe. We want to be valued. We want to have purpose, and we want our independence. Even if we are having difficulty walking, if we're having difficulty paying our bills, if we're having difficulty cooking for ourselves, or we can't drive anymore, we still want all these things. So again, these are very important things for us to keep in mind as we're having these conversations to care for our loved one. So a good strategy for us as long distance caregivers is to plan and then to adapt. Right? It's good for us to recognize that the needs our loved one is going to have are going to change over time as the memory disease progresses, right? So right now, your loved one may be resistant to things that you want to activate on their behalf, right? But it's still good for us to plan in the event that there is an emergency, or if they're unable to do something for themselves that they previously were able to do. What is our plan to immediately put into place to kind of step in and to help with that? And Jillian is sharing, on my job, one resident wakes up at 3 a.m. saying he's ready for work. Yeah, that is so common, right? So very, very common. So thank you for sharing that, Jillian. So I think everybody here can probably relate to that. Maybe other people have been in that situation as well. So thank you for sharing that. So, so although you might not be able to immediately, put into place what you want, it's still good to plan for that. So then when the time does come and there is an opportunity, you're able to enact that plan to make that happen. So, and some things for us to consider as far as that goes, like, does your employer know about your situation? Just in case something would happen and you would have to leave emergently to go provide some assistance for a loved one, would you be able to leave work to do that at a short notice? So this is time to kind of get everything in place for you. So if it is needed, you are able to do that. And also think about, if something does happen, who is local to where your loved one is, who could kind of step in to manage things until you got there. So it's a good idea to get all these things in place now to help you in the event that something does happen. So, and then we also know, since Alzheimer's and other of the neurocognitive disorders are progressive diseases, that our loved one's going to get worse as time goes on, right? We had one of our friends who's here today mention that the insight was an issue earlier, and it isn't now because their loved one is more advanced. So it's good to plan now for the next stage. You might not need 24/7 care now, but it's good to start thinking about that and to start to plan for that, and then to be able to adapt as you go along as well. And we're going to take a minute and we're going to look at that, at what you might need to do to help you plan and adapt right now. Now, as you're doing that, our organization, we're called Care to Caregivers. We have a program because we focus on the caregiver. This is especially important for adults who are caring for parents. As you come up with your plan for what is best for your loved one, it is very important for you to think about what is best for you. I cannot tell you how many people have called our line for support who were adult children who gave up their jobs, gave up where they were living, moved in with mom or dad, or sometimes mom and dad. They wind up being there for 10 years. They've left their home, they've left their job, they've provided 24/7 care for a parent. And then when the parent dies, they're rebuilding their life all over again. And they might not be in the best situation, financially, and they may be housing insecure as well. So as you are coming up with your plan for your parent, deciding what needs to be done, and you are stepping up to the plate to assist, also think about the impact of what you're doing on you. You know, you might want to move in with your parent, or take a leave of absence for 3 months to go and support them, but you have to think about the implications of that in your life as well. So, planning and adapting. So this is something for you to think about, and you're going to get a handout with this worksheet so you can kind of write this stuff down on your own and help you with your plan here. But think about who can be my supporters for a time of crisis. So include people who can step in to assist your loved one on site wherever they are. And then you also have to think about yourself. Say you have to leave and you have to go, because your parent's in the hospital and you really need to be there in person to oversee the care and make decisions. What if you have children at home? Who's going to pick up your kids from school or take them to soccer practice? Or who's going to cover your work duties as well? So you need both emergency care plans for your loved one and for what you have to do at home as well. Legal documents. Are all of my legal documents in order? Do I have the financial stuff done? Do I have the durable power of attorney? Do I have advanced directives? Do I have my healthcare proxy? Good time for you to think about that and work on those things if they aren't done. And then also family leave policies for your place of employment. Am I eligible to take a leave if I would have to go? Look into all that now. Find out about that. It's a perfect time to do that when there isn't a crisis. So then when something does happen, you know what needs to be done to enact safety for yourself and for your loved one. Okay. So make sense, everybody? Is everybody with me? So, so good. So let's move on then. And anybody, can you relate to this question? What do I do when there isn't a primary caregiver in town or my loved one lives alone? This is the main problem for people who are long distance caregivers as well. It can be very, very frustrating dealing with this. So, and anybody, yes, Joanne is saying yes, yes, too. I'm just going to share a few suggestions, but if anybody has other things that are working for them, please type in chat and let us know about that as well. So the practical challenges that we need to figure out when this is the case is we have to figure out what's needed day to day, right? What can they do for themselves? What can't they do for themselves? So, and Joy is sharing, be ready to pay for caregiving services. Yes, 100%. Oftentimes this means that we have to hire people to do these things for us. Sometimes there may be other family members or other organizations where people can get support who can offer some of this. Sometimes we have to pay for that. So yes, finding reliable and affordable help is a main challenge, right? So Megan is here today, and I think everybody has her telephone number. Definitely want to encourage you to follow up with her and with Alzheimer's Group so you can find out about resources in the area where your parent lives that can support you and that can help you with this as well. So what are some of the things that we need to do? We need to identify connections and supports that the person has already. And thank you, Megan is putting the AGI number in there. So please take down that number. So, sometimes there might be a neighbor who is coming over every day anyway and giving them their mail. So let's find out what is going on. Determine who is willing to help. Maybe there are people who are in their faith community who are available. Sometimes faith communities have volunteers who support members and other community members as well. So investigate that. And then you can also match people and services to the roles. Sometimes people do hire a home health aide who will do the cooking, the cleaning. They can help with, bathing and medication and all of those things. Sometimes we can hire out by role. Sometimes you might be able to get someone who will do the grocery shopping, and then there might be someone else who will do the cleaning, and then maybe there's another person who transports your loved one to doctor's appointments and such as well. So, so if you don't have, a 24/7 caregiver who can do everything, we might have to break it down by role and assign person to the role as well. Sharing contact information, so very, very important. Anybody who is helping, we definitely want to get all their information, right? And we want to make sure that they have all of our information, and finding out when's the best time to kind of contact everyone. We want to express gratitude and appreciation for everybody who is helping, right? And then we also need to clarify costs for team members. You know, if somebody who you are paying, if you ask them to do something else, we have to make sure, is there going to be extra cost related to that? So hopefully these are some questions that you will find helpful as you try to assemble your care team. So again, on your worksheet that you'll have, you can identify who are the current people who are already involved. Then you can think about, what are community supports I can reach out to in the future? You know, maybe home delivered meals, maybe friendly visitors. And then what are professional supports I can consider? As one of our friends mentioned here, Joy mentioned, be ready to pay for caregiver services, right? Well, there's lots of options out there. You know, there are home health aides. There might be a geriatric center where your loved one could go and get some support. I know that AGI offers lots of good supports as well. Some people even hire private geriatric care managers who are kind of there to oversee the care. That's an excellent option for people because they can kind of be your boots on the ground there. So that is something to consider as well. So, and anybody, if you have anything to share on this as far as assembling your care team, has anybody had success in finding people who are good support for them in the area where their loved one lives? Please let us know about that in chat. We would love to hear about that. But this is probably where we're going to spend the bulk of our time, right, in assembling our plan. So we're going to plan ahead, right? We're going to plan, and then we're going to be able to adapt as time goes on as we assemble our care team. So as we're doing all of this, it can be a lot, right? You know, how many hours do you spend on the telephone? Or how many hours are you on the computer kind of researching all of these things to kind of pull together your plan of care? Probably a lot, right? Anybody who wants to share, how many hours a week do you spend kind of navigating all of these issues long distance? We'd love to hear how much time you're spending doing that. So if you're new to this, getting into this, it's great to get yourself a good system from the get-go. Some people find having a book or organizing files online with all the contact people and all the resources to keep everything up to date, so then the people who are there handling everything for you can be kept up to date with all things that might be changing, like medication, right? If your loved one's medication changes, which often does, we need to keep up on that. If you have to go see a specialist, right, you might have to bring some medical records with you. So having a place where you can kind of keep everything organized is going to be key, and it's going to save you a lot of time and a lot of stress as well. So some people get like accordion folders, and they kind of put all of the papers in there, or they organize all their folders electronically as well. So all of these things can be very, very helpful. Karen is sharing here, I try to limit my support to a certain time of the day to help myself really. Oh, Karen, thank you for sharing that. That is such a great tip. This could take up your whole day, right? So thank you for sharing that. That's really a great suggestion, and hopefully something that everybody else can learn from here too, that setting boundaries with the time that you spend for this can be very, very helpful, because it can be so time consuming. Thank you for sharing that. And if anybody has another tip that they use to help them manage the details, please type in chat and let us know about that as well. So as we're dealing with all of those kind of technical things and the logistical things, we know the emotional load of this can be a lot. People have already mentioned that here, right? very, very difficult emotions that we can experience. One of the top ones caregivers feel is guilt, right? That I'm not there, that I'm not doing enough, even when you're doing everything that you can, right? Balancing responsibilities and sharing caregiving with other family members, right? All these things can be very emotionally trying. We might be the long distance caregiver, and there might be another family member who lives nearby who really isn't stepping up to the plate and doing things that could be helpful. So that can kind of cause conflict for us as well, right? So guilt, how do we manage the guilt that we might feel? Well, the first thing is just to really give ourselves a healthy dose of self-compassion throughout the day. So, and this is a helpful phrase that many caregivers find. I did the best I could with the information and resources I had at the time, considering the circumstances. I did the best I could with the information and resources I had at that time, considering the circumstances. So we know we can't be in two places at once, right? It's just impossible. So we do the best that we can, and then we have to let ourselves off the hook. And then we have to pick up and we have to keep going. You know, we offer ourselves that non-judgmental attitude, you know, the same care and compassion that we try to give to our loved one who we're supporting. We offer that to ourselves as well, right? We may want to be able to be with our parent and then also work our job and, you know, be at our child's school play, but it's just really impossible to do that. So we have to constantly offer ourselves a reality check and offer ourselves that compassion. We can acknowledge it when we feel that guilt, but then we can do a reality check, and hopefully that can help alleviate some of that guilt as well. Is it easy to do this, everybody? You know, anybody here experience guilt, and is it easy to have compassion for yourself, or do you find that a challenge to have compassion for yourself? And please type in chat and let us know, where are you with your self-compassion as you're going through this? I'll give it a minute here just to see if anybody's, you know, how they're feeling with their self-compassion. Sometimes we have expectations of ourselves, right? And in reality, we know that the illness that our loved one has means that there are lots of things that we can't control, things that they can't control, and things that we can't control. So, so as we're dealing with the guilt, right? Joanne is sharing guilt and anxiety, both are dominant in my life. Thank you, Joanne, for sharing that. And I bet that, you know, many of the other of our friends who are here today deal with that as well. We get anxious about all these things, right? So sometimes taking action, you know, maybe you, when you get your worksheet from Megan today, you can start to work on these things. So then when you feel anxious, you can reassure yourself, I am doing things to help improve the situation. And then when you feel guilt, we acknowledge that feeling. I'm feeling guilty right now. I acknowledge that guilt is here with me. And then we speak to that guilt non-judgmentally. We say, thank you for the message that you're giving me here. But in reality, I know I'm doing all that I can. I'm doing the best that I can. And hopefully that those messages of guilt will kind of dissipate a little bit. These are common things that all long distance caregivers deal with. Adriana is sharing, my mom is the primary caregiver, but I always try to help her the most I can to make things easier for her. That helps me feel better that I contribute, even being far away. Thank you for sharing that, Adriana. Very, very important. That's another great way to kind of deal with guilt as well. Stop and call to mind things that you are doing, things that are going well. And that can reassure yourself that you are making a difference and that you are moving ahead to help support your loved one as well. Thank you for sharing that. So another emotional challenge that long distance caregivers face is balancing competing responsibilities, right? Anybody here have other people who they're caring for? Some of us might have people who we're caring for where we live. It could be younger children. It could be other older people as well. It could be partners. We might have relationships of other people who are dependent on us, or who just want to spend time with us, right? We could have children who need our attention. We could have other community responsibilities. We're not even talking about our jobs, right? And Barbara is sharing, my mom is the primary caregiver. I feel guilty when she is overwhelmed taking care of my dad, right? Sometimes there could be another well parent in the home who's the caregiver, and we feel guilty that we can't do more to support them as well. So yes, all of those things come into play. Thank you for sharing that, Barbara. And Diane is sharing, my friend felt tremendous guilt when deciding to bring her spouse to a care residence. It took a lot of sharing with close friends and AGI to sort out the difficulty accepting the care level needed for him. She had to care for her own health. Thank you so much for sharing that, because yes, especially if we need to place our loved one in a residential facility, we have a lot of guilt. Thank you for sharing that, Diane. But as you mentioned, your friend was starting to have health difficulties, right? So sometimes, the things that we have to do, we don't feel good about it. We know we have to, but we do have that guilt afterwards. So yes, very complicated. Acknowledging how complicated it is and having trusted professionals to support you with this can really, really help you deal with these emotional challenges. So balancing competing responsibilities, I'm sure everybody who is here is doing this. Sometimes we have to prioritize, okay, mom or dad might need me, but I have, a big project at work. I really can't leave that right now. Or I have, children who need support, and this is not a good time for me to be leaving them, or my spouse or my partner. This might not be a good time for me not to be there to support them, or I might have my own physical health things going on, or my own mental health needs that I need to take care of as well. So we're constantly having to evaluate and prioritize all of these competing needs. Nicole is sharing, sometimes support can come as calling more often. Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. Sending emails, pictures, and saying what we've been up to, making time for family members that are here, and checking up on them if my mom is worried. She lives out west in Victoria, British Columbia. She had hip surgery, so I flew out to be there for her, which took pressure off my sister and brother. Thank you for sharing that. Sometimes the support, we don't have to be there in person, but sometimes it's that daily phone call or sending those pictures. And sometimes the main caregivers who are there really appreciate that we're keeping up and we're helping, and that we're able to go there and relieve them as well, right? That leads to another way, is sharing, caring with family members. Sometimes that goes well. Sometimes there's a lot of challenges with that, right? So finding ways to communicate positively, and like Nicole mentioned, the emails or the phone calls can be very helpful. Acknowledging that family members might see things differently. Maybe the person who lives there thinks that mom is able to do more things, and maybe from what you can see from where you are, you think mom might not be able to do as much, but there could be some differences there. So we're always adjusting our expectations with our family members as well. So as we navigate all these very difficult things in sharing the care with family members, and I have a whole other session on this, on fostering teamwork in the family as well, but it's really important for us to be grateful for the people who are supporting you. Sometimes it might not be family members. I think many people have disappointments in family members not stepping up to the plate to kind of do more. Maybe you're the one who's always taking off from work to go and to provide some in-person support, or you're the one who's kind of doing all of this planning behind the scenes. So sometimes we can have resentment, and we can have ill feelings towards our family members who aren't as supportive. That's all right, because that's a reality, right? But on the other side, stop and take a moment to offer gratitude for the people who are supporting you. And it might not be your family members. It might be people from AGI. It might be people from your community, or people from the community where your loved one lives as well. But be grateful for the people who are helping. And contacting AGI and other organizations in your area, other professionals, they can help you navigate all this stuff as well. So, and we have our friend is sharing here too. I was a PAB, so I know about putting the commode closer to her at night. Great, great. So sharing your experience and your knowledge with your family members, even though you're not the one there, is a great way to help. And putting batteries in her remote for electric bed because they didn't think about it. Excellent. So excellent suggestions there. So even though we might not be the ones who are right there, as Nicole is sharing, sometimes we can really offer some wonderful support for the people who are there and support them as well. And sometimes, if we're not the one who's on site there, just calling and asking the person who is the main caregiver, how are you doing? I know this has got to be very difficult for you. Acknowledging them for all that they are doing and asking if there's anything that you can do from a distance, it can be a very helpful thing as well. So as we're going through all of this, it is so important for us to show our self-compassion, right? We have compassion for so many people in our lives, but we need to have compassion for ourselves too. We need to forgive ourselves, for whatever may happen where we feel like we're not measuring up. We need to pay attention to our negative self-talk. And when we hear that, acknowledge it and replace it with some positive self-talk as well. A simple thing that I love to do, especially when I'm starting to talk down to myself or be critical of myself, is just put my hand on my heart. And why doesn't everybody join me right now? Just put your hand on your heart and take a pause and feel the warmth of your palm against your chest. And offer yourself some kind thoughts. I am doing the best I can. I am enough. This is a difficult situation, and I am managing as best I can. So that's a very simple thing that we can all do any time of the day, any time of the night. When we start to feel guilty, when we start to feel overwhelmed, when we start to feel anxious, just take that moment, put your hand on your heart, and offer yourself some self-compassion. As our friends have already mentioned here today, this is really challenging on an emotional level, right? We might not be the ones in the house who are doing the hard physical labor, right? But emotionally, it can be very, very draining, and that can start to have consequences for us. So we need to think about ourselves. We need to get support for ourselves. That means building our support network. So think about that for yourselves. Who are your supporters? Who are the people where you live who can support you? And who are the people where your loved one is who can support you as well? So share one way you can build your support network. So maybe somebody is doing something now that's really good support for them. If you are, we'd love to hear for that. We would love to hear that in chat. So type for us in chat, or maybe there's something you would like to do to build your support network. Please take a second and type that in chat for us as well. So some things that caregivers find helpful, coming to stuff like this, everybody give yourselves a round of applause or pat yourself on the back. You are here and you are building your support network today. So you've already got these skills. So what else can you do? What's one thing that you might like to do to build your support network? You know, maybe there's this support group which you're going to vow to attend regularly or try to go to once a month. We at gerontologists are on this call to let you know that we are here to support you if you ever need to move your loved one to a residence when it doesn't work out at home. We provide a lot of support to families who are not close and dealing with a lot of stress. I'm not sure if this is an appropriate place to say this. Well, our friend here, Kate, is offering this information. Please take down her website here. And thank you for sharing that. So yeah, sometimes our support network is to find professionals in the area who can help us navigate that. That's a great thing. And Joanne is sharing, ask for more support from my longer distance brother-in-law and sister-in-law. Excellent. Identifying what do we need and asking people. Wonderful. And Lauren is sharing, I find it helpful to just talk about the situation with family and friends. I discover that others have either gone through similar issues or have advice on where to go for help. Thank you for sharing that, because yes, you can be surprised about how many people have dealt with this. So yes, talking with other people, it's great when we can talk to family and friends about it. It's also great to go to a support group like this where you can talk with other people who are really walking in your shoes as well. So I encourage everyone to keep up with Megan's support group at AGI and other support groups that might help too. And sometimes people really benefit by some one-on-one counseling, you know, especially as when your loved one has memory loss and your family's trying to work together to kind of support the person. Sometimes old family dynamics come up and unresolved, you know, work or unresolved issues come up with our family member. It can get complicated for some of us, you know. Every family has dysfunction in it, right? And when we add the memory loss to it, sometimes that makes it more complicated and more emotionally challenging for us. Many caregivers, especially long distance caregivers, find it helpful to have their own one-on-one counselor or therapist to kind of support them. That can be a short-term thing or it can be a long-term thing. So please consider that as well. And I'm sure AGI can give you some referrals for people who can support you as well. So also very important, you know, emotionally to support ourselves. We talked about some ways to do that. And Karen is sharing here, AGI has been amazing, wonderful. So if you're new and you haven't called AGI, call them and find out, or call them and find out about more services that may be helpful to you. Remember, we talked about as our loved one's memory loss gets worse, the situation's going to change. So we might need something now that we didn't need before and we didn't know it was available, but call and talk with AGI so you can find out about those services that can help. It's also important for us. We're going to take care of our emotional well-being, right? But we need to think about the healthy habits that we're doing for ourselves on a regular basis, right? I know we're worried. Is our loved one eating? Is our loved one sleeping? You know, are they getting enough movement and exercise during the day? We need to keep our pulse on ourselves as well as we're doing all of these things. So am I getting the exercise? Am I getting the movement? And am I getting what I need to be physically healthy, right? Am I eating nutritious foods that really, really help me? Very important. Sometimes we're so busy. I mean, this is the lunch hour. Maybe everybody's here during their lunch hour. I hope you're eating too, but we need to engage in these healthy habits for ourselves, including sleep too. So Kate is sharing, I'm reposting to everyone, as I think my last message only went to the host. Oh, so Kate is putting a resource in here for you. So everybody, please check out this resource as well. So we just need to keep our tabs on ourselves as well and think about what we need to be well as we're dealing with all of these complications. What do I need for my physical health? What do I need for my mental health? And what do I need for my recreational health? Maybe we're spending a lot of our free time trying to navigate all of this stuff for our parent, right? And we're not able to do those hobbies and leisure activities that restore us and give us energy to keep going. It's important for us to identify those things as well. So as we wrap up here, I'd love for everybody to type in chat here, what's one thing that you want to do for your own self-care? Just please drop that in chat. We would love to see that, something that you want to do for your physical, for your mental health, or for your recreational health. Please drop that in chat so we can read those out as we're wrapping up here. So yoga helps clients for balance, etc. Can save a bad fall. Thank you, Nicole, for sharing that. That's great for our loved ones. It's great for us too. We need to do all those stress busting things as well. So thank you everybody for posting something in chat. We would love to see what's one thing that you want to do for your own self-care. Barbara is sharing, continue going to yoga at least weekly as well as other gym classes, right? Thank you, Barbara, for sharing that. Improve sleep quality. Lauren, thank you for sharing that. Yes, these things are all very important. Continue with counseling with the Alzheimer's Society. Excellent. So maybe being here today, you got a suggestion for something to do, maybe that you're not doing, that you want to do. Adriana is sharing, I started to do needlepoint again. Tapestry helps me relax. I love that. Wonderful. And Jillian is sharing, I long to have a full 8 hours of sleep. Oh, we're all there with you, Jillian, 100%. So focusing on these things and being proactive, not expecting that it's going to happen, but scheduling time for us to do these things can be very, very helpful. We want to make sure you know about AGI and that you're contacting them about the various circumstances that you have right now to see how they can best support you. You're welcome to go onto our website here at www.caretocaregivers.com. We have tons of great educational materials, which may be of support for you as well. So I want to thank everybody for being here. I know this is the lunch hour, so we want to wrap up here in a timely fashion. I want to thank everybody for being here. I wish everyone the best with their caregiving. Remember your compassion for yourself as you're dealing with this. And if anybody has any thing that they want to add here at the end here, please. And I'm going to turn it back over to Megan for our wrap up here.
Thank you, Mary Catherine. I hope my internet connection is going okay. I do have one question for you because I get this often with families. Your long distance caregivers, the person living with dementia, they might get frequent calls throughout the day. And, it's about setting clear boundaries. How would you guide families in responding to the multiple calls that you might receive?
Well, we know that that's common, right? As a person's memory loss progresses, they're less able to figure things out for themselves and they're less able to reassure themselves, right? We know that perseverative conversation comes up, right? They can't remember what you just told them in the phone call that you just had 2 minutes ago because that area of their brain is impaired, right? So when you start to get those phone calls, that's a message that your loved one is not able to navigate day-to-day things for themselves, that they need someone there to reassure them. We know as the memory disease progresses in the brain, the person can't control that. That means that the environment has to compensate for that. So that means we have more people in place to provide that reassurance, right? So that's a cue. When you're getting those phone calls over and over and over again, mom can't navigate this on her own anymore. She's going to need to have someone there. So that's when you're going to need to think about my next step. I'm going to need to have someone there for her during the daytime. If she's up all night and she's calling you all night on the telephone, then you might need to have someone there at nighttime. It's a problem behavior for us because they keep, interrupting us and they keep contacting us, but it's a symptom of their illness. They're doing the best they can to try to figure that out, and that's calling you on the telephone. So we have to realize that there's a mismatch between what their abilities are and what their actual situation is, and then we need to remedy that to work towards that.
Yeah, and I also
does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I think, setting boundaries, making sure that their loved one is safe. So checking in with who maybe could be a good care partner in town to check in to say, are they calling because perhaps they need, as you said, extra support or to be engaged in an activity because they're bored or they need reminiscence. So making sure that they're safe, and then of course getting more resources. So thank you for that. What we see at AGI is a lot of, sometimes family conflict, where one adult child might see that the other adult child, as you said before in your talk, might not recognize some of the limitations of the person as they do. Sometimes long distance caregivers see things when they come to visit that are being supported without realizing it in person. So understanding everyone's perspectives, I think, and understanding that everyone has good intentions in making sure that that person living with dementia is safe and well looked after is really important. I'm getting lots of great feedback from your talk today. Everyone's very appreciative. Of course, there's cameras. And you know what? One good thing about all of this is that we have technology, as some people have said. So FaceTiming, using Zoom calls, trying to stay connected is also really helpful. So thank you, Mary Catherine. I really appreciate it.
Good. Thank you, everyone. Best to everyone, and keep going and keep taking care of yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, everyone. Have a great day. If you need more resources, don't hesitate to call. You can look at Mary Catherine's websites as well, and we will make sure that you get all of the documents necessary. So have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.